one of the architects of the great 49er teams back in the 80s and 90s. It's Carmen Policy. He's back on the morning roast. We love having Carmen on. It's a big week. Niners and Browns. We'll get into the Browns angle and your time in Cleveland. But Carmen, good morning, man. Welcome back to the show.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on. I love it.
I love it, too. And just your thoughts real quick on the 49ers. 5-0. You got this quarterback who was the last pick of the NFL draft just a season ago. The last pick. And right now, I can't name a quarterback through the first 5 weeks of the season who's playing better than him, and that's Brock Purdy.
Let me tell you, during my years with the 49ers, how the last pick of the draft was viewed by the personnel department and the coaches. They would give me the last pick. That's how unimportant they saw the pick in so many ways. And it was so much fun because then some of the coaches, and they'd start lobbying me to pick this guy or pick that guy and so forth. And as a matter of fact, one of my proudest picks was Alvis Gerbach. Remember him?
Michigan. Michigan.
But here, this isn't only the last pick of the 49er draft. This is the last pick of the draft. And he's sitting there like some precious jewel that's sort of exposed. And nobody's reaching to put him into some kind of setting to be a gorgeous piece of jewelry. And I'm amazed. First of all, it's a great story for the NFL. It's a great story for America. And I just love it. I'm so excited about this season. And I can really get doubly excited because now I'm a fan. I'll sweat it like the fans will, but I'm not right in the middle of it where I'd see 1,000 things that could go wrong and go over all the problems we're going to face, just like the game coming up this week. A game like the game they're going to face in Cleveland would drive me nuts with all of with the ifs, the ands, the buts. This is a trap game. This is any number of things can happen here, and but that's what makes the season exciting. And I just have to tell you, I kind of love cheering for this team.
We do too. I mean, they're just so much fun, and it's crazy. Like you were talking about the end of drafts. I've heard vividly many times. Bill Walsh arguing for taking Dwight Clark when everyone's like, he'll be an undrafted free agent. And that felt like a great story, like an improbable story, a guy who's an underdog. This feels like one of the most unbelievable underdog stories of all time. And like people talk about luck when running a franchise. You do have to be lucky, but you also have to stick to your convictions and make moves. They could have brought back Jimmy. They could have brought back Trey Lance. They get credit for pivoting off those guys and sticking with this guy. That's got to be hard for a front office to stick to your convictions given where this guy was found.
I agree with every single thing you said. And I think that, first of all, think of the mess. Just think of the mess that the team, the organization, that the whole situation would have been in if there was no one like Brock Purdy there to step in and not allow this wonderfully talented bunch of players to have the kind of leadership and the kind of offensive buzz that they need to really make it a truly complete team. But instead, as you said, the combination of John Lynch and the coach did what they thought was right, and they had the latitude from ownership to make those decisions. You can't forget that either.
It's true.
This could have been a very, very serious situation where an overly aggressive ownership could have come in and said, you guys, you kind of messed up this draft a little bit here. You gave away a lot for a guy. Now you want to get rid of him. And who do we have? Who are we going to put in there? You just sent Jimmy Garoppolo off on his own. Oh, we're going to put Mr. Irrelevant in. I mean, when you think about it, they really said, okay, guys, it's your show. You produce. And it turned out, it could not turn out better, even if Hollywood were writing this.
No, seriously. It's one of the great stories we've seen in the last 30 years, last 50 years with this kid. But, Carmen, I know you were in the thick of it in the 90s, went to rivalry in the Dallas Cowboys, 3 straight NFC championships. Now, kids in the car, I want you to close your ears right now because, Carmen, I got to ask you. How much fun was it watching the Niners kick the Cowboys' ass on Sunday?
Oh God, it's so good. They are the Cowboys. Okay, here's a team that is by far the most valuable sport franchise. I think actually now they may be the most valuable sports franchise in the world. Although there'll be some people who talk about Premier Soccer that would argue with me and so forth. And who would have ever thought that a Texas team would eclipse a New York team in value in terms of the marketplace?
Yeah.
But they're flying high. And when's the last time they went to the Super Bowl?
Year after you guys won it. Yeah, it's been a while.
Right. And I know you guys are younger, but do you remember our rivalry with Dallas most of all in the 90s? It was a bloodletting situation, and whoever lost that game, that whole community was in mourning for probably 2 or 3 weeks thereafter.
I used to cry going to elementary school, Carmen, due to those losses to the Dallas Cowboys. They would ruin my week. In those games, we would circle on the calendar. It was the only game that mattered. The Saints, Falcons, Panthers, and the old NFC West didn't matter. It was all about the Cowboy game. We all circled that date.
Yeah, you're right, and that was part of the fun of it. But I have to tell you, when they came in, I'm so proud of this 49er team. The way they were ready for it, handled themselves, the way they presented themselves before the game, the way they presented themselves at the game. Now, I haven't followed very much as to what's happened after Sunday, but I don't think much has happened at all. So I'm going to have to say that I'm hopefully very proud of the way they followed themselves after the game too. Yeah. And it's just that they seem like such a complete team.
Yes,
and they also seem like they enjoy playing the game, almost like men enjoying a boys' game. And when you get that combination of enthusiasm for the game itself, coupled with good coaching, coupled with a good organization, coupled with all of a sudden a totally balanced team on every aspect that's presented by the game, and liking each other, I don't know how you stop it.
Yeah,
I just don't know how you stop it.
I want to peel back something you brought up regarding ownership and just the whole decision when it comes to quarterback and kind of where they're at right now. You were the liaison between Bill and Eddie and back and forth, and it's well documented. They were at each other's throats at times, and I'm sure, Bill had wild things to think about when it came to Joe Montana, the quarterback. I've heard rumors he tried to trade for John Elway. He was in and out on him at every turn. He obviously did trade for Steve Young. How difficult is it for doing what happened, like whiffing royally on that number 3 overall pick and having to deal with the conversations between the owner and the expectations and the money involved and the egg on their face, and then finding Brock Purdy and having a winner in Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, that entire dynamic, I don't think we've explored it from a John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Jed York dynamic, because you're the perfect person that would know what it would be like.
Those were very trying moments for us in our day, and they kind of went a long way in ripping Eddie and Bill's relationship, not apart, but let's say stretching it very thin. And Bill was hell bent on trading Joe as early as he could, rather than have him there and have him not perform later. And he was convinced that he would not be able to physically handle the job either. And he loved Steve Young. And in fairness to the coach, we're talking about 2 Hall of Famers here.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, the Joe Cool and one of the, I'll say, the greatest to play the game at that position, and somebody who just happened to stumble into the locker room, to take his place. We're talking about 2 Hall of Famers here. But it was a very trying and tenuous period, and it was very tough on that relationship, as I said. It was also tough on the team, because there was a lot of confusion going on, and there was, a testing of loyalties and so forth and so on. In this particular case, you didn't have to go through that. What you went through was the unknown of the abyss, if you will.
Right.
Of what's left after, okay, we waved goodbye to Jimmy, and here goes Trey Lance. Oh, Scott Purdy. All right, let's see how this works out. And to have it turn out the way it did, and to have everything in place and ready for it, and the team react the way they did, I think that justified the extension of the contracts for both Lynch and Coach Shanahan.
Carmen, what would Bill Walsh think of Brock Purdy? I've watched a lot of old DVDs. I didn't know him. I just, he's immortalized in my household. But he taught footwork, anticipation, knowing where to go, practicing perfect, hitting guys in stride with perfect ball placement. What would Bill think of Brock Purdy?
Well, first of all, I think he'd be pretty impressed. But Bill was also a believer in what you see originally too. Just like, when there were some doubts, there were some doubts about Jerry Rice early on. And why isn't he living up to what Bill's expectations were and what the expectations of others were? And Bill never doubted Jerry. I mean, he saw what he saw, and he knew it would come about, especially with decent coaching. On the other hand, when you look at it from the standpoint of what we're dealing with in terms of Purdy, I don't know if Bill wouldn't have bought into it until he's seen enough to convince him that it's there. If he didn't see it from the beginning, he would have to be, let's say, overly convinced, in my opinion, that this is the way to go, and this is the person that's going to lead us there to the promised land and so forth, including Joe Montana. I mean, I think honestly, that there was a lot of pressure on Bill to take Joe in the third round. And the pressure came from people like his coaches, the college scouting staff, and so forth and so on. And because he didn't at first think that was the case, and then of course he realized not only that it was the case, then he realized that this was the answer to what we were looking for, and his coaching and his mentoring helped really bring a lot out in Joe. I don't think there's anybody who would doubt that, not to mention the fact that he created an offense that was perfect for Joe.
Carmen Policy here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game, former 49ers executive and CEO, 5 Super Bowl champions. Carmen, we keep bringing up ownership and Bill and everything that's happened. What about Jed York and the job he's done? He's gotten ridiculed a lot in the past. And all he's done, look, he identified, hey, this coach isn't working, I'm a pivot. This coach isn't working, I'm a pivot. I think he learned from the Harbaugh situation. Now he's got these extensions for Shanahan and Lynch. But the one thing that a lot of things get brought up around here is that, ownership may be cheaper. They're penny pitching. They have so many guaranteed contracts, and they pay the money up front. What about the job Jed York has had? I don't think he's gotten enough credit over the last 5 years with the 49ers.
Well, I think he had a rough start. I do. But by the same token, so did his uncle. Right. I mean, Eddie's like a brother. He's probably one of, if not my very best friend, and I had great opportunities thanks to him and so forth. But he had a very rough start and made some mistakes. But then he saw things open up. He understood what the business and the game was about, and he became, in my opinion, one of the great owners of the NFL. And as a matter of fact, I don't think we were a dynasty without any one of the Holy Trinity. And the Holy Trinity to me was Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, and Eddie DeBartolo. Mm-hmm. Take any one of them out of there, and I'm not sure we're anywhere close to a dynasty. But I think what I've seen is that I think Jed York, like his uncle, had this light go off, and it started shining on what it is that he should be doing. And I think Jed started paying attention to the business end of things. I thought to building the franchise as a business entity that's going to be able to supply the football operations with what's necessary to make it successful and to make it continually successful. Not a flash in the pan, but a continual contender. Right. And I see it and I think it all started with Shanahan and Lynch, and he's been pretty true to those guys and to the team in terms of what they need, what is it that they require to get the job done, and staying out of their way. I'm not saying that he doesn't expect accountability, but staying out of their way as they're going through the sausage making proposition that we call coaching football. And he learned in the same way his uncle did, and maybe probably took a page from his uncle, maybe some advice from his uncle. I think he deserves to be viewed as a pretty darn good owner in this league in terms of a major franchise.
I agree with that. We got the gentleman, Carmen Policy, one of the best to ever do it around here, 49er executive CEO. And I think a lot of people associate with the Niners, but I always think about you and Dwight as well whenever we get talking about the Browns, and they obviously left to go to Baltimore. They were one of the original AFC teams with the Niners back in the day before the NFL absorbed them in. And they go away, and you and Dwight are instrumental in being a part of the ownership group that brings the Browns back into the NFL. Take us through that time. Enlighten some of the younger people about how you got involved there.
Well, I'll tell you, you want to talk about an Indiana Jones kind of a journey. Believe me, I had no idea what I was going to do, and we were going through a little tough time here with the Niners, some transition within the family. And then I had this opportunity to go back to Cleveland and partner with a fellow to become a contender for the Cleveland Browns expansion franchise, and we got the franchise. We were successful over 8 other bidders and one very, very significant bidder, and from New York, who also had people like Don Shula in his camp and going with the Browns at the time. So we were feeling pretty good about that. But the proverbial dog who catches the garbage truck, what do you do now? Because we had to get a team up and running in months. They didn't give us the same kind of time that all the other expansion franchises had, because they were using the Cleveland Browns as leverage for the other teams that didn't have stadiums done yet. So they refused to issue the idea that this is going to be an expansion franchise. But we went there. There was rented furniture. We had an exciting time putting it together, and we were in the playoffs. In the third year we were right there, and then last minute we didn't make it. But the fourth year we made it in the playoffs, and of course the owner died, my partner, and I came back after that. But boy, that's an experience that I'll never forget. And I have to tell you, it was exciting. And Dwight was a trooper. He wound up with a job and responsibilities he didn't anticipate, and dealing with the league was really shall we say, a challenge.
Right.
But we got it done, and the fans back there are they're incredible. Do I have time for one quick story about the old days against Cleveland?
Absolutely, because I was going to say, you've got one playoff appearances they had. They've got 2 playoff appearances since 1999. You're part of one of them. So I was going to talk about the futility in the Cleveland Browns organization. That'd be good at all, but go ahead, give us a quick story.
We want it.
I wanted to.
So we're there, and it's one of the typical Monday night games in Cleveland. Okay?
I remember this game.
So Eddie and I are there, and we're right in the game, and we're supposed to win the game, and then they beat us at the very end. All right. So now it's we leave the locker room, and it's time for us to get out. We get into Eddie's car, and he has a driver, and we're leaving, and there's a narrow area you have to go out, and this is the old stadium now. This is that old, municipal stadium. It was cavernous, and the crowd's out there. they start rocking our car. And it was like a scene out of, Beirut. You're leaving the American embassy, and the crowd's out there rocking the car and so forth, and they're yelling and they're showing us various fingers and yelling stuff at us. And Eddie says, "These Cleveland people are crazy. We lost the game. It's not like we won it, And finally, the police came to let us. And this is after we lost the game. Imagine if we tried getting out of there when we won. But we also historically played Cleveland 1984, and this is when we had the holdup, Fred Dean.
Yeah,
we got Willie Brown to fly to Cleveland and help. And I was negotiating with Willie
the mayor, Willie Brown.
Mayor Willie. Well, he wasn't mayor then. He was Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was Speaker of the Assembly. So he flies in with his mink coat, and he's going to be the moderator for this negotiation because we got to get Fred Dean back. And so we're negotiating. I couldn't go to the game. We're right there by the stadium. And finally, we work the deal out, and we get there in the fourth quarter. And as we're walking into the stadium, it's pretty close. We win the game. Players come off the field, and there we are. And Willie was able to announce that Fred Dean's coming back.
That is good.
You know the rest of the story.
Carmen, I'm looking at that game. If it's 1984, you guys won 41-7.
yeah, but Cleveland, you never knew.
So the Monday night game that you're talking about, I remember the Monday night game there in 93.
The Monday night game we lost.
You lost 23-13. That was the first time as a kid. I was 11 years old. Shask, I think you were 11 as well. Steve Young was the first time I ever seen an NFL player smell salts on the sideline.
Yes.
They're talking about the smelling salts. And I was like, what is that that Steve Young is sniffing right now? What is that? Is he trying to get his senses back? Yeah, so we remember all that stuff. But it's going to be fun in Cleveland, man. No doubt about that. It's a big game. They have a really good defense. But, Carmen, you're always good to us, man. We're going to let you go. Whenever you want to come on, you have a free invitation.
Yes.
It's always – the time is yours whenever you want to come on.
You guys are fun, and thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me to go back a bit in history and also to talk about the current team.
Hell yeah.
How about that defense,
I love
Carmen?
cheering for him.
Carmen, how about that
How about
defense?
CMC?
Christian McCaffrey, the defense, Fred Warner. I mean, he's one of the great linebackers in 49ers history.
Fred Warner. And, Collinsworth, I love what Collinsworth did when he was showing some of the things that were so outrageously dynamic that Warner did in terms of reading coverage and doing the kind of tape work that he does and so forth and so on. I mean, he's just amazing. And then what's the other fellow's name? Greenlaw?
Oh, I love Greenlaw.
Drake Greenlaw.
That's me and Bonte's favorite. He's got an edge.
Yeah, he's nasty.
Yeah, I mean, and he's over there too. I mean, that's what I'm saying. They're so balanced and they're so, I guess I could use the term deep. And McCaffrey, his father played for us. They used to always say, throw it to Ed McCaffrey. He catches everything. And it's just, it doesn't get any better than this.
No,
it just doesn't.
They're just missing one more thing, and hopefully they get that in February, Carmen. Hopefully you're enjoying the wine. Hopefully you're enjoying the wine. We're enjoying the journey, but it's back to what it was. And I tell the fan base all the time, don't be afraid to say Super Bowl or bust. That's what we grew up on. It was always we enjoyed the seasons, but it was always about hanging that banner at the end of the year. And that's what we're about with the 49ers. So I'm glad that we're back to that standard where it's Super Bowl or bust, and it's a disappointment if we don't get to the big show. It's good to have that feeling again.
It's a great place to be.
Yep. No doubt. Carmen, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen.
Anytime. Carmen Policy here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game.